completely alone. Hello, my name is Andrew, and I find myself in a perplexing situation. As a 23-year-old IT worker, I had a rigorous and demanding freelancing schedule that left me working day and night. The long hours caused me to lose my natural sleep pattern, and I found myself becoming a nocturnal creature, sleeping during the day like a vampire. Despite this unusual circumstance, I had to maintain my well-being to continue working. My daily dose of caffeine, energy drinks, and cigarettes kept me alert and focused. Without them, I would have been too drowsy to carry on with my duties. As the days turned into weeks, my transformation into a nocturnal being became more apparent. I found myself becoming increasingly isolated from the rest of the world, as my days were spent sleeping and my nights working. This lifestyle took a toll on my physical and emotional health, and I began to feel drained and exhausted. Despite the challenges I faced, I persevered, driven by my passion for my work. I continued to work tirelessly, fueled by my determination and my reliance on stimulants to keep me going. As I lay in bed, I found myself unable to sleep. It wasn't just the usual toss and turn routine that kept me up, but the incessant nighttime commotion from my neighbors. Night after night, I was subjected to the tumultuous sounds of a couple who were presumably married but clearly unhappy. The shrill voices of a man and woman filled my room, hurling accusations and insults at each other, punctuated by the anguished sobs of the woman. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of relationship they had, or rather, what kind of life the poor woman was forced to endure. Each night, her pitiful cries served as a resounding echo of their daily agony. How could anyone live like this, I thought to myself, trapped in a cycle of misery and despair? The man's voice was harsh and grating, his words laced with bitterness and resentment. Meanwhile, the woman's voice was raw and vulnerable, as if she had already lost all hope. It was a tragic symphony that played out before me, night after night, without fail. As the hours ticked by, I found myself growing increasingly anxious and restless. The constant noise made it impossible to relax or even think straight. I longed for the sweet release of sleep, but it seemed that even my dreams were haunted by the sounds of their strife. It was a torturous existence, one that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. I could only hope that one day, the couple would find a way to end their suffering and escape the vicious cycle that had consumed them. Until then, all I could do was lay there and endure the agony of their discordant melodies. As I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, the clock struck 3 a.m, and I found myself chugging an energy drink, berating myself for my unhealthy attachment to them. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a man's angry voice coming from the neighboring apartment. He accused his wife of infidelity, and their heated argument escalated quickly. The sound of shattering plates echoed through the walls, and the shouting grew louder and more aggressive by the second. I couldn't bear to hear it any longer, so I decided to confront them. I marched upstairs to their door, filled with a burning desire to give them a piece of my mind, to tell them exactly what I thought of their behavior, and to mock their pitiful excuses. I wanted to make them feel ashamed of themselves, to put them in their place for their unruly behavior. With great force, I pounded on their door, hoping they would answer and face the consequences of their actions. But to my surprise, they fell silent. Not even a whisper could be heard. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Despite my initial urge to continue knocking until they opened the door, the effect of the energy drink started to wear off, and I began to feel exhausted. I knew that I had work to do, and I couldn't afford to waste any more time. So, I reluctantly retreated back to my apartment, feeling frustrated and unsatisfied that I couldn't give them a piece of my mind. As I settled down at my computer, a sense of accomplishment washed over me. I had mustered the courage to reach out to strangers, something I rarely do. The mere thought of communicating with people I didn't know filled me with unease, but I was determined to break out of my shell. However, as I stared at the blank screen in front of me, a wave of nervousness crashed over me. I tried to push through it, but it only seemed to grow stronger. So, I resorted to an unhealthy coping mechanism, reaching for my pack of cigarettes and lighting one up. As I smoked, the tension slowly began to dissipate, but one cigarette wasn't enough, and I lit up another, then another, and another, puffing away until the nicotine buzz numbed my senses. With each drag, the anxious thoughts in my head began to fade, and I found myself able to focus on the task at hand. At 10 p.m., I awoke to the sound of dishes clattering and angry shouts. I quickly realized that my neighbors were at it again. After a quick bite to eat, I returned to my work, hoping to tune out the noise. But around 1 a.m., a new type of commotion began to emanate from next door. This time, instead of shouting, I heard moans and cursing. It was a strange mixture of sounds that made it difficult to concentrate on my work. And to be honest, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy. I had never experienced that kind of passion with anyone, and I wondered what it would be like to have someone crave me that way. But those thoughts were quickly interrupted by the sound of furniture being moved around. It sounded like they were having wild sex, but then I heard the woman say, "Stop it! No! No need!" Suddenly, my instincts kicked in. It sounded like the man was hurting her, and I knew I couldn't just ignore it. But I was too scared to confront them on my own. So I did the only thing I could think of and called the police. As I waited for the police to arrive, the woman's screams grew louder and more desperate. It was a haunting sound that filled me with dread. Despite my fear, I felt a strange sense of obligation to help her, but I couldn't bring myself to knock on their door. Eventually, after what felt like hours, I fell asleep. As soon as I opened my eyes, I scolded myself for being so helpless. The feeling of regret overwhelmed me, and to calm down, I grabbed an energy drink and lit up a cigarette. Little did I know that this would only lead to greater frustration as I realized the harm I was causing my own body. To make matters worse, my sleeping pattern had been erratic, leaving me feeling terrible upon waking up, with no recollection of the current date or time. It was as if I had been transported outside the constraints of time itself. The guilt of my actions weighed heavily on me, and I couldn't help but wonder what had become of me. How did I get to this point of self-destruction? I was filled with a sense of hopelessness, as though there was no way out of this vicious cycle. Every day felt like a never-ending battle against myself. The drinks and cigarettes had become a crutch for me, a temporary escape from reality. I knew that I was only harming myself, but the addiction was too strong. My mind and body were in a constant state of turmoil, and I couldn't seem to break free. Late at night, I was lost in the depths of YouTube when I heard a blood-curdling scream. My heart raced as I listened to a man's voice threaten to end a young girl's life. The sounds of shattering glass and clanging metal echoed through the apartment, followed by frantic footsteps. It was a living nightmare, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The screams grew louder, hissing and incoherent, but still unmistakably terrifying. Summoning all my courage, I took the elevator to the floor above to confront them. When I arrived, I didn't shout or pound on the door with all my might. Instead, I tried to force my way in with my own body weight, which at the time was not very inflated. Miraculously, the flimsy door gave way, bursting off its hinges. Before me stood an immaculately finished room, completely adorned in a stark white hue. There was no furniture present, no sound permeating the air, only an empty space for sale. The walls, ceiling, and even the bathroom tiles were of the same blindingly white shade. It was as if I had entered a void, devoid of all color and life. The monochromatic scene left me feeling disoriented, prompting a flurry of questions to flood my mind. What was my occupation? Had I even left the house recently? How had I sustained myself for the past few weeks? Where did I procure my cigarettes and energy drinks? Each inquiry went unanswered, and the weight of uncertainty began to settle in. The only fact that remained steadfast was that I was completely and utterly alone. No other soul had ventured into this space except for me. It was as if I had been trapped in a sterile box with no hope of escape.